Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa rabbil alameen. As-salatu salam ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. My dear brothers and sisters, I hope that you're doing well today. And I wanted to touch on a topic again about the Sahel, but about the Wagner group, because it's important for those who want to know and to give you updates about what's happening in the Sahel region and how this affects the Muslims and the Fulani in particular. In this episode, we're going to talk about the Wagner group, who now we have confirmed reports of them being killed by the same very group that our G5 leaders, our African leaders, our Muslim leaders, and our misguided leaders, and the Western leaders have called terrorists. And this is a development that lays credence to some of the documents being generated, because they're making analogies to concerning the Afghanistan, what happened in Afghanistan, what's going on in the Sahel region. There's some parallels, but there's a lot of dissimilarities as well. So let me give you my felicitations. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh lil ikhwani ikhwati fi din. Salamu ala mani tabahuda lil ikhwani ikhwati fi Afrika, Europa, America, Caribbean, Kuli Makan. Halin wa salim bikum. Anzurama to my full-bay community and to my brothers and sisters wherever you may be. So let's look at this. And we have to look at something here where we have a soldier here. The French and the Russians, the Russian force, the Crusaders, have been being killed off. The French, even though they're supposed to have left, but they still have soldiers there. This is, again, why you have to siphon through the news, because you'll find, they'll say yes, their mission is left and so forth, but there's still special forces operating in this area. And we know they're being engaged. We know the French soldiers have been killed. We know the G5 peacekeepers have been killed in this region. We're talking about the corridor again of let me see here. We get a map here so you can see here, better see, get a picture for those who don't know. The corridor here of the central corridor, which you see Mali, you see Burkina Faso, Niger. There's a high concentration of the foreign forces, Tuba forces coming from Europe, America, and whatnot, and Russia, and they are heavily situated in this region. This is where a lot of heavy combat is going on. This is basically the central area of where the Mujahideen groups are engaging them. As you heard me talk about here, I've been making references that don't be confused and fooled by some of the majority of Western reports, where they linked even the Fulani herdsmen. Now they call them AQ and IS. It's not true, brothers and sisters. Okay, that is erroneous, and they know it. But even though they're reporting what they're reporting, but they're still making a lot of things wrong in these reports by lumping everybody, especially at the Fulani Mujahideen groups, all of them belonging to IS or to the AQ. This is not the case. And so you see the corridor there, and of course Nigeria, northern Nigeria is important. A lot of fighting is going on, but a lot of banditry and everything is going on there. I'm going to still touch on Central African Republic inshallah, at the ILEP, because we need to know about that, and the Cameroons and whatnot. But you see now that the G5, according to their statements, are concerned because we're starting to have conflicts now with Fulani herdsmen and all the coastal states. And so the Wagner group, in their communiques that they have talked about, and you have been seeing their interviews, if you understand some of the Russian language and whatnot, they have, there's a lot of stations now in Eastern Europe you can get by satellite, and sometimes they interview the Wagner people and their spokespersons, and you get some very interesting information about that. And the Wagner give interviews, and they're talking about this region. And a lot of this, you don't get this in the English language, but you get it in the Russian language. And so I've been listening to some of their communiques and some of their talks. Very interesting what they say. They're more forthcoming and they're more realistic than the Americans when the Americans talk. The Americans just give a blanket statement and they say untruths. The Wagner group are telling the truth about the difficulties of the Sahel region and whatnot. And they made it a point to say that in order for them to be successful, they have to defeat who? The Fulani. So we go back to the same issue again. And so the brunt of all the atrocities being made are the Fulani people. But they have done some things to the Tuareg, Afro-Tuaregs and the Afro-Arabs. They have done some things to them, also to the Dongon people and some other ethnic groups. But their concentration has been on the Fulani people. And they've been getting assassinated. And here's the funny thing, brothers and sisters, and I'll go into my talk. There was a communique issued out by it was a group communique where they had Mujahideen groups. A few of these groups had authored this letter talking about, and they straight out told the Wagner group and the hypocrite Sahel states that they are coming after them because of the atrocities that is taking place as we speak right now. And I'm gonna give you some of these atrocities. I've been giving to you almost every other day or so. I've been giving you some of the things to get you to understand what's going on in this region. Now, I will preface this also by saying I know there's people who are talking and people have wrote to me, but most of the response to me has been positive. But I also have gotten people who have, now this is very interesting here. I'm looking at some of my, I don't know how this came about. That's very interesting. Very interesting to say the least. How do these things come into my, boy, that's very interesting. There was a picture of my family and stuff here. I don't know how that got in here. That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. That's very interesting, brothers and sisters. I got a lot of the pictures that I had put in here have been replaced. That's very fascinating. That's very, very fascinating. Anyway, like I said, I will get into some topics here that about what has happened here. And I'm going to start off with the targeting. It's been reported about the Wagner group. And here we have to talk about Mali, because Mali is central. What the Wagner group is doing, as I explained to you before, brothers and sisters, and this is very ingenious on their part. They concentrate their efforts, especially to mineral-rich African states. And they offer their services in this regard. In return, you're not going to believe what they're being paid. We have the Russian foreign minister talking about what they're being paid. They're being paid literally almost 10 million per month, 10 million US dollars per month to fight in their countries to protect the hypocrite governments, the corrupted African governments, selected governments. 10 million a month. Now, brothers and sisters, you think about how much money this is. It's 10 million per month. And you're talking about most of the Sahel states are very poor. People live in horrendous conditions. When they can't supply this money, they turn over mineral rights. You see, again, brothers and sisters, where this is leading. Some of these mineral rights are being taken out and sold at black market prices. The Wagner group then in turn hire more mercenaries to come into Africa. And why now mercenary groups are wanting to come into Wagner? Because they see Africa as a gold mine, literally, where they will be enriched. Now you think about 10 million per month that's given to these soldiers. Some of the Wagner groups and others has been there 2 years. Now you add that up, how much money that is. When they can't meet the payroll, then they turn over to gold mines. This is what our African leaders are doing. Shameful. But they're doing this. And so they're talking here about since about 2020, France got his butt kicked. Okay, they won some battles in the north against the Tuareg, okay, in the Afro-Alps. I admit that they did. But they did not fare very well when you got to the central part of Mali and to the central part of Mali. And here's another map here. They have not, when you look to the south of where this, the thing where it says Mali, they have not ventured very well, to the point where the new junta there in Mali said, look, you're not doing us any good. So we're throwing you out. They left officially, but unofficially, they're still there. As with other European troops as well, they're there. And of course, the Wagner group. The French consider the Wagner group to be competitors, not allies. So they too are revealing things about them. And remember what I was telling you, what my dad said. He said, when you have one guy who is among a racist group of Tuba, he says, when he comes out to start to bare their soul about what is what they're doing in this racist group, he said, you should listen, because he's in the inner circle. We start to see that as the Tuba nations are turning on each other, turning on Wagner, because Wagner is making a handful of money, 10 million per month cash. If they can't meet this payroll, then they turn over mineral rights. This is what they're doing. I'm exposing this to you now so you will know exactly how the African governments are paying for this. This is very, very, very shameful, to say the least. And let me see here. No. Boy, I tell you something. I don't know what has happened here, brothers and sisters. I don't know what has happened. But anyway, we know that the Wagner group is running roughshod, and they're becoming very wealthy on the backs of African backs, and our African leaders are in cahoots with them. There's other things I could spend almost a week alone, but I'm going to break it down each time to you so you'll understand what is happening and how we're being betrayed by our own leaders in these matters. And I showed you that these terror programs, all these initiatives are fraudulent. They are fraudulent, brothers and sisters, because our leaders are basically selling, as they did in the slavery times, in transatlantic slavery, where our African kings and so forth, what they did in order to stay in power, they empowered, especially the Portuguese. The Portuguese fought on their behalf, and then for war booty, for payment, they took slaves. We still have this process being done today. Our African leaders are doing this. Now they're giving where our most precious minerals, and they're trafficking our women. So we still have the same thing since about the 1400s. We've had the same formula. Weak African leaders, turncoat African leaders, in cahoots with the Tuba, with wicked crusaders, and they go after the Muslim groups in particular, and then they enslave and they make money. We have no different now. The Wagner group are very, very, very wealthy, brothers and sisters, because they're taking gold alone out of Mali and selling it on the black market. Now, you know what gold is worth. See, and they're taking this gold to the UAE, who's involved. And UAE, in turn, helps to sell this on the black market. It is a vicious, fraudulent situation, brothers and sisters. To justify what they're doing, they say, me, you, and others are terrorists. So they put a lot of smoke. They accuse me, others, the Americans, the Europeans, the Russians, now are starting to accuse all the Muslims, fundamental Muslims. You heard me talk about this. The Muslims who are weak in the religion are not being fought. The Muslims who drink, smoke, who are secular and moderate, they're not being touched. Muslims who don't pray at all. We have terms in this in the Arabic language. I don't need to give this to you, but they are weak in the deen. They're not being fought. But the ones who pose the greatest threat to them, even they said this, the Wagner said this, is the fundamentalist Muslims. Because why? Since the 1400s, when the Portuguese began to come here, they've had encounters with Mujahideen groups since the 1400s. And they find it very difficult to defeat them. And the only way they have been able to conquer the Muslims, especially in the Sahel and in the coastal West Africa, is because Africans sold them out, as they're doing today. G5 in particular is calling me, you, all of us terrorists, so they can hide behind what is going on. And then they have allowed the Tubac to come in and take mineral wealth. This is a vicious, fraudulent operation that's been taking place right now, and so forth. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. This is some of our Fulani sisters here. I don't know if you understand, if you really care about what's going on, because she's not living in Los Angeles, California, or these sisters here are not living in Bed-Stuy in New York, or in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., or the suburbs of Dallas, or in the ATL. And you may say, I don't care. But these are our sisters. Do you know what's going on in the Sahel region to them? Our Fulani sisters are being raped and ravished at a clip that is unparalleled. And they are now supporting babies from these bastards, these white bastards who are raping them, keeping them for months. Even the UN has admitted what their sexual assaults are going on. But our black folks are quiet to this. Our AU is quiet to this. Our G5 leaders are quiet to this. But we have some benevolent Tubac groups who are exposing us for what it is. Human rights groups are exposing us. We have beautiful young sisters and their mothers are being ravished as we speak right now. And we have nobody talking about it. And I will say this too. There's one person in particular had the gall to complain about me talking against the Tubac and what they're doing in the Sahel region. I was polite with the brother, and I know what he wrote. I understood what he said. But you know what? Because he said I should not talk about these issues. What issues should I talk about? What issue should I talk about? I'm a Muslim. I see a wrong, I'm supposed to talk about it. And I will continue to talk about it with the permission of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I mean, this is horrendous. I'm looking at reports here. Let me go through some of the things that was said. In Mali in particular, there's a region in the area called Nia Oro. It says the Wagner men tore off the women's clothes and raped them. This is reports after our sisters, 3 days that they came in this and under disguise of terrorism. Remember what they always say? They come to say, I'm looking for Yahya because we know he's a terrorist. And again, I'm over here trying to defend my daughters, and they call me terrorist for it. They come in with manpower and high-tech military madness, bomb the area, drive the men out. We tried to take our families. Many of our people are killed in the process. Some of our women or not. We were thinking that these are human beings. So what they do, the sisters who are left behind, who are injured, they begin to ravish them. They call me a terrorist and my brother's terrorist, protecting my daughters and my wife and my mother. Now, the Messina group exposed this issue as well and said they're hunting them, and they've killed some of these Wagner guys. They killed some, and the hypocrite black soldiers. Okay, and here they're marching through the area, and they go through places like this, and they have free reign to do what they want. The Malian forces and security police, they know what these soldiers are doing. They know they come in there, they see beautiful young Fulani girls like this, and they turn their back and allow these guys to take our sisters and our daughters and our mothers. And they say nothing. So when our brothers come back to the village to hunt these guys down, the US, African pundits, the EU, the AU, all of us say, this is a terrorist operation. Here they're marching through our villages and they're taking our sisters. I have the report right here where they admit what is going on. They said 3 days of assault of the Malian army and the mercenaries from the private Russian group in a village in central Mali. Okay? Several inhabitants have accused him of rape and sexual assault. We have collected these testimonies. We have women who have come forward who were raped. And they told what they did. They came in a village, and what they do, they examined them like they were dogs and cats, like they did in slavery time. If you remember what the Europeans did to our African ladies, our sisters, our ancestral mothers, when they brought them over. And even on the boats, they began to examine them, their private parts and so forth and so on. And they decided which ones were valuable for them to ravish, and they ravished them. If you remember the reports that they wrote in their own journals, many of our African mothers who were taken as slaves were impregnated before they even reached the shores of the Americas. That's why, remember, many had babies, even and they jumped in the ocean and killed themselves and their babies and so forth and so on. We still have this process going on today. As our brothers come back, the Messina group come back to these villages to protect their daughters and their mother and their wives, we have everybody calling them terrorists. Our pundits, our African pundits are calling them terrorists as well to back up the Tubab and what they're doing to our sisters. Now I'm exposing it again. And I ask you a question, brothers and sisters. You sitting there in Compton, you black man, you sitting there in Compton. Now you tell me, are you going to allow the Tubab to come in and take your sisters and your daughters like this and take them for a three-day ride, huh? Like they did in slavery time in antebellum South when they used to take our sisters in Alabama, Mississippi? Huh? And you do nothing? And we're supposed to allow them to do it. We cannot fight back. When we do, we get terror designations hoisted on us, me, you, everybody else for defending, oh, excuse me, for defending against these bastards. It says here that the Radio International, France International, they exposed this. Excuse me. Boy, I picked up some dust. Excuse me, brothers and sisters. And they exposed these raids are nothing but tantamount to raids where they ravish the sisters. They go to these villages, as I showed you here. They ferret out the beautiful Fulani women and they go to ravish them. And our Malian troops, our black troops, sit and watch and protect them from the Mujahideen. When the Mujahideen come, they wait. And now, from what we understand, what the Mujahideen groups are doing is they let these guys, because they can't take them off because they're fearing that they will shoot accidentally some of their their kinfolk in these villages. So they wait for these bastards to come out and they ambush them. We know this is what's going on. Again, they just went on a ravishing of our Fulani Sisters campaign for 3 days. When our brothers engaged this man, okay, and they engaged these guys, the AU, the EU, the Russians, the African pundits, the G5 call that terrorism, not the ravishing of our daughters. That's not, no, they don't call that terrorism, but they call the Mujahideen for taking these guys on and taking these guys on terrorism. So now you should be understanding what's going on here, brothers and sisters. Now, we have one report here we got one brother here, the imam of the village here, talking about how the beginning of the raid and what happened to him. They tortured him, but he escaped. And he talked about these. He said there were Malian soldiers, black soldiers, and white soldiers, he said. He explained to it. They came 9 in the morning, and they began to come, and they asked questions about where are the Mujahideen. They know the Mujahideen groups. They're not going to sit there. As I told you now, in the Sahel region, the brothers are rough there, okay? The Fulani herdsmen and the Mujahideen groups there, the Afro-Tuaregs and Arabs, they are rough because they've been in jihad since 700s. Now, you know they're not going to stand there in these villages and be sitting ducks, because since the UN's declared everybody terrorists, whoever fights a Tubab is called a terrorist. So they're not going to sit there and turn themselves over and let these guys kill them, because we have reports here where they executed many people in the village because they said that since the men had beards, they had to be what? Collaborators with the Mujahideen group. So they ferret out, as you heard my report last week, what they did. The UN admitted it, that they seek out people. They find a man with a beard, boom, he's taken and he's killed. This is what's going on from these Wagner group and other white mercenaries who are there, and our black troops are protecting. G5 is quiet. Our African pundits who talk about this issue, talk about the Mujahideen, are quiet. The AU quiet. Why is that? So he talked about this. This is the imam of the village. He had to witness this, brothers and sisters, from these Wagners, the Wagner group. He says here, when they came at 9 o'clock in the morning, he said the Wagner group came and they forcibly undressed and photographed as though our women are in porno. So they stripped our Fulani sisters. They stripped them. You know what I mean? Okay, they had no clothes. Okay, and he said he was tied up. Okay, he was tied up and other men were tied up, but they sit there and allowed them to watch what they were doing. Small group of about 40 of the men, 40 of these guys were, okay, accomplice. They said they accused him and others being accomplice to they call them jihadists and so forth. Now here, what they're doing, they just stripped our sisters and they're calling the jihadists, talking about the terrorists, and loaded them into truck. These are innocent old men primarily, and young men, had nothing to do with, they're not part of the Mujahideen group. Then he said they began to come, and then they began to imprison people there and all the men, and then they began to take the sisters. And then at this point, they said the reprisals, and they took in the nearby villages, they began now to attack the sisters. They began, young girls, elderly women were sexually assaulted. Again, he said they were forcibly undressed and photographed as though this is some kind of porno show. They stripped our Fulani sisters. As our Fulani sisters here complained, they said in fuller language, they're talking about this, they complained, they begged because they're virgins, they're virgin girls. And you know, Muslim women, especially Fulani, okay, they begged them not to do things to them, but they didn't care. So they said they forced some to undress, and they photographed them and videotaped them. And other villages, others were raped directly in their homes. Once they found overly attractive, they stripped them and they got them in their home, and for 3 days, They ravished them. See? Then others, they said, took many others and they disappeared. So some of the sisters, they don't know what happened to them. Then they said that the Wagner group plus the Malian forces came in and they began to loot and find cash and valuables, gold, jewelry, and so forth and so on. Because the Fulani people, remember, brothers and sisters, they sell a lot of cattle and meat and products, and many of them have money, but they don't show their wealth because of the system of Pulaco. If you understand Pulaco, if you understand what this is the code of conduct that the Fulani people use. Yes, they're Muslims, but also this is a code of conduct that is taught to them. And I gave you this last couple of weeks about how this conduct, being respectful to your elders, and so all this is Islamic and whatnot. And so they have money, but they don't show their wealth like most of us do. We get money, we start buying cars all over the place. They don't do that. See, they keep their money and their wealth kind of, close to their chest, so to speak. And so they said here they begin to take money, jewelry, and valuables and whatnot. And then they begin to burn the shops down. Now, the sisters who made a lot of grains and milk products, they looted that. Then they came and then they began to kill all the animals. This is what the Wagner group and the soldiers did in this one place here called Nia Oro. This is the area where we're talking about now. And so this is what they had done, and this is reported. So brothers and sisters, you see these horrendous acts. And so what has happened is now the Wagner group has been received. They have received from the Mujahideen. They told them, man, I'm going to tell you in the vernacular like we do back in Compton. Man, we get you, we're going to kick your ass. That's what basically that's what they told them. And they're doing that. And the reports here is talking about them being killed off. Okay, they've been killed, 5 here, 10 here. They catch them in ambushes, they set them up, and they kill them. They say this is terrorism. The Americans say this is terrorism. The French say this is terrorism. The British say this is terror. The AU says this is terrorism. G5 said this is terrorism. See? So that's why I said we should be mad and angry with our leaders for being in cahoots with this type of thing. Who can sit, what black man sits by there? He knows his sisters are being ravished and they say nothing. Why our leaders are not engaging these bastards for taking our sisters like this? How can they sit there and allow that and say nothing and then go after the brothers who come back after they find their daughters and their mothers and their wives ravished? They go to hunt these guys down and they go to kill them and they say this is terrorism. This is a very, very disheartening situation, brothers and sisters. Here's some of our sisters like this. They stand no chance to hardened soldiers who've been fighting, to a man, period, because men are physically far more superior to a woman. And the AU, the UN, the Americans, all of them are telling us not to come to defend our sisters. They say we're supposed to allow this. And if we do, we're going to be called terrorists. But apparently the Mujahideen group said they don't care because they said, we're hunting you down. They told them, the Wagner admitted, they said, we're coming after you. And of course, the article here now has to switch things around. They go ahead and said one group who's splintered group from the Massini group, they said that they are the official branch of the AQ in Mali. Bro, that's a lie. They're not. The Fulani herdsmen have nothing to do with the AQ and the IS. That's nonsense. But they talk about headlines and communiques that they've been given out. And they said, we know the Wagner people are enemy to us. And they talk about what they said they had clashes. They've been now clashing with them. Again, because of the terrorism designation, the letter goes on talking about, they were saying that that now the Mujahideen are engaging the Mali forces, and they're also going after the Wagner group and France. They're fighting these forces as we speak, brothers. They're fighting them. And the jihadists or the Mujahideen are called, they said they didn't call the Crusaders Wagner Crusaders, but what they're calling them is mercenaries and criminal militia. That's what he's calling them. That's what the Mujahideen group is calling these Frenchmen and the Americans, all the Crusaders who coming in there. But we have names for them. I know in the Arabic language and in Islam, in the Sharia law, we know that we have names for them. We don't call them necessarily this. We have other names for people who do this type of thing like this, especially who are non-Muslims. So then here we got, again, our brothers talk about, now they have been ambushing. They said they got an ambush in the region where they ambushed the Malian army, and they got some of the mercenaries and also militias. And they said that they know, because the documents been generated, that the Wagner group, the Malian army, and other militias are waging an ethnic war against the Muslims and against the Fulani in particular. They said that when they engaged these, they killed many of these soldiers, and they have found the area where the Wagner group and the Malian forces had gathered up cattle. And again, brothers and sisters, if you take 100, 200, 500, 10,000 cattle, do you know how much money this generates? This is a lot of money that's generated. So they tracked these guys down who stole their cattle. These were the Malian army. This is selected what they call Tubab. They're Tubab mercenaries. They weren't sure if they were Russian, but they're Tubab forces plus pro-government militia. And they found them, they got them, executed many, and then they returned the cattle and stuff back to many of the Fulani who they stole it from, the villages. Now, this is a report. Now you understand, brothers and sisters, what's going on. I ask you, and you have to decide. You yourself, I'm giving you evidence for 3 weeks now. Our brothers who just fought, these guys who just raped our sisters and our daughters and our mothers and our wives, they found them. You see the report. They found the guys, and they executed many of them. Is this terrorism? I ask you. I do know what my position on this is, but I ask you, brothers and sisters, who may listen to this, who's listening to this now, and those who listen in the future, is this terrorism? You have to decide that. Now, this study goes on further, brothers and sisters. It's talking about how now the Mujahideen groups, and see, of course, because the racism prejudice is starting to come out now, and some of the people who are making money from the UN and other groups, they're talking about, even though they know what has happened, the raping of these women and our sisters, the Mujahideen groups are now going back to protect these villages. They're signing soldiers to stay there. Mujahideen soldiers to stay in these groups, to stay in these villages. And so, of course, they're saying this is a terrorist operation. And they're saying, even though the Russians have been, the Wagner group have been doing things. Oh boy, excuse me, brothers and sisters. Even though they've been doing things, they still want to side with the Tubab and the forces, and they still call these brothers who did this terrorists. And I'm gonna jump onto other things here, and I'll be closing pretty soon. The article also talks about what has happened because of the operations of the Wagner group. The Wagner group has talked. If you understand the Russian language, they've been giving talks in certain CCTV. I can't think there's other TV groups too. And you can catch them on CNN, and YouTube. They're giving interviews about what they're doing in the Sahel region in the Russian language. Okay, not in English, but in the Russian language. And they're talking about the things, and this has been verified here. They said here that since their operations for the last couple of years, they said that the jihadist groups have killed 40%. They said 40% of the soldiers have been killed. You're not getting this. See, this is what is happening, brothers. You're not getting all of this. CNN is not talking about this. The MSNBC is not talking about this because these is black folk killing white folk, and they don't like to see this because they can't admit that ragtag Africans can organize themselves to the point, even in Africa, to fight and defeat the Tuba. But the Wagner group, to their credit, has admitted here, they said that they have suffered 340% loss, okay, in percentage wise. 40% have died in army operations. Yes, mercenaries, soldiers, militias, and all other types of individuals who join. They're starting to die at a hell of a clip in the last 3 years. The Mujahideen are killing them. So now, they said the Malian soldiers in particular associated with the foreign fighters, possibly Russian. Again, this is another thing that's happened. Remember, I gave you the one last week, which happened 8 months ago, almost near a year. They killed 500. Well, recently, about 5 months ago, they killed another 300 civilians in another town in central Mali. Fulani people, they killed 300. Okay, women and children, and they lied by making a report saying they killed jihadists, but it wasn't jihadists because they said you killed our families. You didn't kill our soldiers. They said they admitted there was a few soldiers that were killed, and a comment that was generated by the Mujahideen leader, who they said they had killed in 2018. He just made a communique, and he said, Amadou Kofa said that he blamed the Wagner group and the Mali forces for what they're doing. He said that we lost 30 fighters who went to go back with their families. They caught them in these villages when they began to massacre, and they killed them and killed all their families. This is why it added up. And he said they killed 30 of his Mujahideen soldiers, but they killed their mothers and fathers, children, everything else. They killed everybody that's in these villages. So now they wanted to report that. So I wanted to give you this information, brothers and sisters, because this is very interesting what has happened. And we have another report here where we have massacres, executions, falsified graves, and the humanitarian costs in Mali alone. So they are killing the not Mujahideen. We're talking about the Wagner group and other mercenaries and others are killing, and they're making a lot of graves, and they falsifying saying they're killing soldiers, but they finding in these graves old men with beards, and children in these graves, and they falsifying these reports. The French military also, because they got thrown out, they have issued satellite imagery of many of these graves in northern Mali. This is horrendous, brothers and sisters. I could spend almost 2-3 hours talking about this report. It is horrendous. The bottom line is horrendous. And I still say to you, I leave it up to you. When our brothers go to defend our daughters, are they terrorists? Huh? Why is it that this man here is not been called a terrorist? Why is that? Why are these men not being called terrorists? Why are they not being arrested for taking our mothers and our daughters and our wives and ravaging them for 3 days, like in this one report here? I ask you that. And now the Tuba forces are telling the Russians are telling on the French are telling on the Russians, the Americans are talking against the French and the Russians. So they're starting to turn on one another because they know the mineral wealth, and they're mad with the Wagner group because the Malian officials gave, this is another report here showing them coming into an area, getting ready to go fight and whatnot. But the Malian officials gave some rights. They said gold mines to the Wagner group, and that in itself will garner billions in future revenue. So the Wagner Group is really, really gaining wealth from this. And it says here that report, and I'll move on and I'll get ready to close here in a minute. It says here that the Human Rights Watch in particular, and some of the other groups talked about the issue what we're talking about. They said here that they are focusing and they're helping some of the other groups, as you heard me say for weeks. The doggone militia in particular have been at war with the Fulani for 200 years. And they're backing them, and they're going operations against the Fulani villages all over the place. And then they're calling everybody they see jihadists, and of course they kill them. And then when they rape the women, they say the same thing. Then they say here that they have made it a point, the Wagner Group, the Mali forces, the police, and the security forces, and other non-state armed groups, they say here, are abusing, particularly against the ethnic Fulani communities. So now we have proof of what is going on, why we have the problem we have in the Sahel, and how they're calling the Mujahideen groups terrorists. And a lot of times the Mujahideen group go to protect the villages from after their sisters and their daughters and their kinfolk been raped. They call this terrorism. Now you see what's going on. When they kill these soldiers, they say this is an act of terror. The G5 say this is an act of terror when the Mujahideen group go to kill these wicked criminal forces and militias and so forth and so on. You get the picture now, brothers and sisters. And when our African pundits give stories about violent extremism, they report that the soldiers, Wagner, and the militias are being shot and killed. And our African black brothers write against our black brothers who killed these guys after they have raped their daughters and their mothers and so forth. This is wrong. See? And the guy who wrote me, who talked and said that I'm a racist, he said, I'm racist, because he said that I shouldn't be talking against the Tuba. And he said I shouldn't be reporting this. I ain't paying attention to what he has to say to me, because I'm going to expose this. I'm going to continue to expose this with the permission of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, because I want you to understand what's going on in the Sahel. It's a fraud, brothers and sisters, when you read all these reports about violent extremism. But do they talk about these reports here, what they have done? January 4th, 2023, they reported here. These are going again. They killed civilians. Then 2 weeks later, they came back to other villages plus their village and killed elderly women. And they burned them at the stake. Fulani. This is January 14th of this year. They went to the villages. They couldn't find the Mujahideen. They know they're not there. They're not sitting there waiting on them to kill them. They're waiting out there in the bush. They go there to engage them. They're waiting for them out there. They've issued a communique against these guys and told them, we're going to fight you. We're going to hunt you down. We're going to kill you. They told them. So what they do, they go back to these villages when they're not there, and they go and they got an elderly woman and burned her. They burned her to death, they said here. They got an elderly Fulani woman. It says here in the report, this is January 14, 2023. The Wagner troops killed 5 civilians in this one village in the Sahel region. The victims included an elderly woman who they burned to death. Before that, the soldiers looted her house because, again, remember the Fulani people, they have wealth. They have gold and all this other stuff because of their cattle. But they're not like us in the Americas or in other parts. They don't show their wealth. They don't exhibit their wealth with expensive cars and all that. But the Wagner and now the militias and all that, they know the Fulani people have money. They're not dirt poor. They look dirt poor. That's why I told you. But that cattle generates a lot of business. Their milk, they make products from it. The leather and all that generates a lot of money. And our brothers and sisters are not paying rent anywhere. So when they sell 10,000 cattle, they make 50,000, 30,000 US dollars. That's a lot of money to them. They don't have the bills that we don't have, car bills. They don't have this, that, and so forth and so on. So they manage their money very well. So they know that. So when they go to raid these homes, they go there and loot them, and they steal their, remember, their jewelry and all this stuff like this. And then after that, they took the old woman of the house and burned her to the stake as though she was a pig. Brothers and sisters, this is a depressing report, but I had to give it to you as it is. And I have to tell you this as it is, brothers and sisters. The Wagner group is a racist mercenary group. Why are our G5 and our black brothers and our Afro-Arab leaders going in with these groups? Let them come in their place. They're a racist group. I'll get into that another day about the lieutenants. Many of them are neo-Nazis. And they allow them to come in and rule over their militaries. And these guys fight anywhere, but they think green. But they believe in fascism. They believe that they're superior, but they, of course, they will go and shake the hand of a black man because he's been paid 10 million per month, or they'll give the rights to gold mine or diamond mines. And they're accumulating this wealth like from gold in itself. They understand the Sahel very well. They study it. And their talk centralized on how to defeat the Sahel jihad. If you understand, brothers and sisters, some of the jihad is going on. That in the purple you see there, all the way across there in that purple in particular, there is a massive jihad, as I told you. And centering along with that is mostly the Fulani herdsmen and other militia groups, plus the Afro-Arabs and Tuareg, who are more to your left side, but mainly the Fulani are going from your left all the way across to your right. And so they are heavily instrumental into that. They understand that, and they're trying to defeat that, but they know they can't. And they admitted this when you look at their programs. See, so the jihad of the Fulani herdsmen essentially is focused on regarding to stop their aspirations. They're fighting them, as you heard me talk about now. I gave you proof about what they have said. There's a communique. I want those communiques, but you know, I have to be realistic as well too, because you know, my enemies here are looking for anything they can. And I told you what they do out here. When I come out of here, they go to everybody. These guys from the embassy, they go out here and tell people all kinds of things. But many people don't believe it, but out of fear, they listen to them. But when they walk away from them, they don't believe it. But they come out here and talk, and they tell these people all kinds of things. And this is illegal, because it's illegal even, but the groups say that since they're not inside the United States, they don't have to follow U.S. law. That's why they do what they do, hire thugs, drug dealers, and so forth to go after Muslims, especially people like me. So when they go character assassination by saying that I'm out at 10 o'clock at night with whores and prostitutes, or they say that I take money and I fund the young Moroccan brothers here so they can go make jihad in some place, which is, it's incredible. They said also things like I bring a woman to the masjid. Now you think about this, brothers and sisters. What woman? I look like this. I'm an older man on top of that. Okay, I'm telling you right now, our sisters here and all African states, when they see elderly men like me, they respect us. Okay, it's not like the United States. We ain't talking about the United States, how there our sisters and the American women have no respect for men at all. It's gone. But here in Africa, we still have this. So when I walk down the street, I'm respected. And I'm all older men. As I told you before, I give example. Say if I'm on a train, the train is full. Every time it happens, every time. And my wife could tell you, I go on a train, it's full. We'll even have sisters get up to give me their seat. out of respect, because we still have that here in Africa, not in the United States, but here we have that respect. See, so they don't believe it, but many of them have nothing going for themselves. So they'll take $5 US dollars just to say, okay, yes, we believe. So they'll come by me and they'll make comments to me and so forth, so on, because they're told what to say. But it's illegal what they're doing out of the U.S. Embassy. It's illegal what they're doing because they're inflaming the people, the local people here, for them to do something against me. Because terrorism here is a serious issue in Morocco. And when you accuse somebody of that, that inflames, because we've had incidents happen years back. So when they go accuse somebody of that, it inflames the population. But by the grace of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the people see through their lies. So, and the Mujahideen groups, the Aswad, the Ansar-Din, the Fulani herdsmen, various militias said in communiques that they're targeting the Wagner group and their mercenaries and exposing their atrocities. Brothers, they're gunning for them. They're doing no different than what our black folk are doing inside the United States. You go to do things to their families, the brothers start to go and they start to fight. We know that. Everybody know our MO. They're doing the same thing now. Irrespective of all the terror designations that are thrown on these guys, they told the Wagner group, we're after you. They're not hiding nothing. They told, hey, we catch you, we're going to kill you. They've done that because of the atrocities that they've committed against the Fulani people. And they're explaining what they're doing. They said they're fighting them and they're ambushing them after, and they got a mode what they're doing. They're catching them coming out of the villages. I wish our brothers would film these guys, but we have eyewitness accounts. It's just as good because we have fathers, we have brothers, we have uncles, and so forth who are reporting and giving reports about how they were their women folk were ravished. So now the Mujahideen groups have told Wagner in particular, and Wagner has admitted in the Russian language in their stations that the Mujahideen group are targeting them and they're starting to kill them. And they told them, we're going to get you. We're going to find you. This is what we're going to do. In turn, the Wagner group are killing what they call collaborators. They see Fulani herdsmen with beards automatically killed. This is no different than what they do in North Africa and other places. The Americans gave them a playbook, said, hey, when you see men like me, they're terrorists. You go after them. See, so they use this playbook to kill innocent people and whatnot. It says Russia is blocking all resolutions. This is the other thing in the UN. These reports are starting to surface because when the human rights groups go to the UN and say, look, we have eye accounts, we have video, we got pictures, the Russian diplomatic corps goes to block resolutions against the criminal operations was happening in Africa. They block it. So you need to know that. Since 2021, the Wagner and French troops in Central Sahel corridor have been killed. Many. The West and the UN calls this terrorism. You saw the reports that the Wagner group admitted. They've seen a 344% increase of their people being killed in ambushes and straight-on battles, and some in hand-to-hand combat that has occurred in the Sahel region. When they come to ambush them, they get off bikes or whatever, and they come to go hand-to-hand with some of the Russian mercenaries because they're finding them being butchered. So that means that they had hand-to-hand combat with machetes or with the safe, and they didn't prevail. And you can see a single stab wound or something where they were stabbed, in a fight. So we see this now happening. But in order to protect these white mercenaries, Tubab, they call terrorism. And our African pundits jump all over it and write Yahya and his group violent extremism. Muhammad and his group, violent extremism. See, but fascinating, no. But when our sisters here like this make a report to the UN, to their findings, to tell what happened to them, they don't call this terrorism what happened to our sisters like this, our innocent sisters and our daughters. They don't say this is terrorism, but they continue to call me and others terrorists. If you have a beard, you're a Muslim, you Fulani, you're a terrorist, period. And it means that our women folk are allowed to be ravished. They have no rights. But as you know, as you see me say, and now you see the documents being submitted, our Muslim brothers said that they are after them. So even the UN, what they say, all the others say, they don't care. They're talking to them. They told straight out, we're fighting them. They said we're ambushing them. After their raids on our villages, they go to expose, after they kill the bastards, they go and they expose the atrocities. They take reports from the sisters. It's easy. The sister is ravished. She's a young girl, 14, 15 years old. She's had sexual relations now for 3 days with big, strong Tubab men. Now, what do you think is going to happen to our young daughters at 14, 15 years old? So our brothers go there and report this, and they sent this communique to tell the Malian government they're going to get them. And the militias and all the others who involved in this, the French, the Americans, anyone who's in the way, they're going to get them. I don't call that terrorism. I call that freedom fighting. I call that protection of their community. And we all have the right to protect our families. We all have this right. That's why I'm talking to you and giving you this. Even though some said they didn't like what I'm talking about. I don't care. What black man tells me he doesn't like this. If he's on the side of Tupac, hey, we had that. That's why we call them house Negroes in the United States. And we call them down the river Negroes and all the others and ham bones. That's what we call them. So he can talk all he wants. He's wasting his time because I'm not going to stop. Be ifni la. The Russians are blocking all resolutions. And as again, brothers and sisters, we know that the French troops and whatnot are being killed as we speak. But we know the cry of terrorism is being initiated and whatnot against these brothers for doing this. So I gave you this story, again, brothers and sisters, to highlight this. And I will continue on to get you to understand what's going on in the Sahel region, because you should have the picture to understand what's happening in this region. And it's a fraud that what is happening. They give you a false picture because now these reports are starting to come out, but they're not. But these reports are falsified, like it says here, in order for them to continue to perpetrate these crimes. But we have one white sister, okay? She is Sister in Humanity. She wrote about the women because she's talking and she sympathizes with the black women. She's a European woman, yes, but she sympathizes with what has happened to the Fulani women. So she's also making a report because they've been examining our sisters and they took reports from our sisters who've been ravished. See, so all of this stuff is starting to come out. And I leave this with you, brothers and sisters. You tell me what you think. You can write me. If you say this is not terrorism, that I understand. But many of you may not be able to talk. I understand that too. Many of you may not be able to say anything. I understand because of the current system. Just me even talking, as you know, they said this is terrorism just by me talking. And I exposing this stuff and what the Americans doing and whatnot, they say this is terrorism. But what is happening to the Fulani people and to the Muslims in the Sahel, that's not terrorism. See, and I give you what has happened here. I've given you these reports. I've told what they've done. I told you the city that the latest case, this Nia Oral area, the Wagner men tore off the clothes of the Fulani sisters, the women, and ravished them. Okay, so we have this. Now this is almost approximately 7, 8 months ago when this incident occurred. So we have these cases and they're there, and so forth and so on. And so now you see these cases. I'm giving them to you. You guys do your research and so forth and so on, and whatnot. And I'll give you this, and I'm a sin. I'll end this. Our brother from this village I just talked about here, where this report where they raped our young sisters and so forth and so on. He was talking about what happened. They're not hiding nothing. When they took him, they said they took me to the soldiers who asked me who I was and what I was doing here. So he explained who he was. He's the elder of the village. Then he said they wanted him to hand over the leader of the group. They handed him over to the leader of the whites. This is what he's reporting now. He's reporting this. He reported this to the Mujahideen and also to this investigative group led by this one lady here. Where's she at? Where is she at now? What's her name? Her name is Katharina Doxy is her name, who made reports about the women being raped and so forth and so on. We know our sisters were examined and whatnot. But the elder of the village said that what happened to him, he was taken to these white men. And then they asked him questions about where the Mujahideen were and so forth and so on. So they're not hiding nothing, brothers. They're not hiding nothing in this. And they handed him over, and he thought he was a dead man. And he said the leader of a group was white, the whites, and the guys were from Wagner because they told him who they were. So they're not hiding nothing. So the report saying they're not involved in any of this, yet they're standing right there and allowing things to happen. But we've had our people and our sisters have said who have done the things to them. They didn't say it was you. They didn't say it was me. They said they were white men who took them. So they know the difference between, there's a big difference between a Tubab and an African. Hell of a difference. They know the difference between the two. Okay, they know the difference. So their reports are trying to say that our sisters don't know what they're talking about. You don't believe that. See, they know who are white. They know the Tubab, and they know who ravished them. See, so when they go and they told the sister of humanity, the white sister here, the Tubab sister, who is involved in things like this, who go make the report, what happened to them. And of course, they were examined. And you got a 14-year-old girl, you know it's easy to see what has happened to her. You don't need a 4-hour investigation to understand her physical. You know what has happened to her, especially after a couple of days. See, so brothers and sisters, again, I'm going to leave you with this hard-hitting report, and I'll let you think about this. If it's upsetting to you, I understand that it should upset every one of us. Those who are mad and angry with me, I understand. It's up to you. You talk to Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Yahweh, or whoever you call Subhanahu wa ta'ala, his name. And you pray to him and you ask him about issues like this. What should you do? Others, if you want to write me, you write me. But you write respectfully. And if you say that I should not talk, you give me your evidence to explain why, okay? I should not talk and why I should back the Tubab and the Russian forces. If you believe that, because I've had one black man tell me that basically he's backing the Wagner group. We had that in slavery time. Remember, United States, we had the House Negro. Remember what Malcolm called them? We had that. See, so we have that. And so I'll leave you with that, brothers and sisters, and I'll let you figure that out, and I'll let you think about what you should do and how you should handle that. Those of you who like this report and you want to know more about the Sahel, you're not going to get a lot of this on YouTube. You're going to get cursory reports. Even some of our black folk who make reports about this, they don't give you the ins and outs because they don't understand Africa very well. They'll just say black people were taken, white man did this and that, but you don't know what ethnic group was involved. You don't understand why they were there. They don't understand who are the white men who are doing it. They don't even understand the region. If you gave many of them a map, they couldn't even show you on the map where Mali is. They couldn't even show you on the map where Burkina Faso or even Niger is. So we have that as well. See, so you're not going to get a lot of in-depth, hard-hitting reports. You're not going to get that. But I'm going to try to give it to you as best I can, brothers and sisters. See, I'm going to try to give you so you'll see this. And I'll give you thoughts. I'll give you things that you can think about. And you can make your own mind up. Because as I said to you, you should have a well-rounded education like our forefathers did. What do you think our forefathers did here in Africa? You think they were narrow-minded? They only looked at their shoes? No. As the scholarship began to come in, our folks knew about the space. Our folks knew about the land. They understand the animals. They understand the weather. Okay? They wrote about these things. And they even recorded it with the griots and so forth and so on. But the scholarship, the Muslim Emirates, they wrote. So they talked about all of the things, the sciences. They were well-rounded. What happened to us? We stopped that, didn't we? We're not well-rounded anymore. We don't know about where Mali is. We don't understand what's going on in Burkina Faso. But we know about the basketball. We know about football. We know about soccer. We know about the latest rap groups and the latest songs of the rappers. We know about that. We know about the gangsters. We know about that. But when it comes to things like this, we do not know. So our education is very, very limited. We should have well-rounded out education as our forefathers did. That's why the Muslim empires in particular were so wealthy, because Subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them a lot of education. They wrote things about what's happening in the space. They had no way of knowing because they didn't have the technology we have today. How did they know what was going on up there? What they were writing? How did they know? But they knew and he wrote. And now we're finding these things to be so. See, we've had, even the doggone people wrote about the portals that are up there in the space. Now we're starting to figure out we have those. The portals in there, there's something there, because we know about the black hole. They said that even the Earth in our atmosphere, we're in a black hole. We're actually in one. I mean, there's a lot of information out there. And our African forefathers discussed issues like that. How did they know that? They had no airplanes or no spaceships to go there, but they talked about that. That's how brilliant our people were in the past. What happened to our people? See, so we get information like this, they don't want to hear it. But our people, our ancestors, took all information in and used it as an educational tool. This is how we're supposed to do this. So brothers and sisters, I'll leave you with this until the next time here, and I'll get further more into other areas of this, inshallah ta'ala, so you can understand what the Wagner group is doing and what our people are doing, which they're doing nothing, but the Mujahideen are fighting them. And I hope, brothers and sisters, you enjoyed this. If you did, please subscribe to me and pass along this tape. And I appreciate it immensely. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Anzurama.